Wow, just an epic, grinded out game for the San Francisco Giants, and they managed to pull through in 11 innings, a game that lasted almost 5 hours. So much to talk about, so many managerial decisions that we can break down, including intentionally walking the tying run to the plate in the bottom of the 11th inning and bringing up the winning run. So we'll talk about all of that next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Giants listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code LOCKEDON at checkout. And thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And coming up on today's show, man, what an epic grind of a game. The Giants, the final score does not really tell the story. This game ended up being 7-4, but for the second game in a row, it went to extra innings. For the second game in a row, the Giants were able to pull off a win in extra innings, despite just grinding difficulties at the plate for much of the game. Giants started this game off with a single and a double and did not end up scoring. Like literally single double to start the game. Thought they should have sent Thairo Estrada. There were a lot. Mark Hallberg, I have been defending him. I think he's done a really nice job. Actually, I know a lot of you are like, what? He's been terrible. But no, I would say that he's actually been good, because the criteria for a good send is not necessarily only that the guy is safe. That is just completely a incorrect way of looking at it, I'm sorry to say. But in certain situations, you should send him and you shouldn't send him in others. And I thought that last night they had some struggles there. But I want to talk about these managerial decisions, because in a way, like, I honestly want to say that this game I thought was a little bit over-managed by Gabe Kapler. But at the end of the day, they won. And so it's who am I to second guess? It's kind of how I feel about it. But let's just go to the most dramatic moment first. Bottom of the 11th inning, the Phillies bring up Bryce Harper. Like I said, the game was 7-4, so Harper is the tying run in that situation. We can talk about how Kyle Schwarber never should have walked. I thought there was an umpire decision. The umpiring in this game was bad, but that was the situation. Bryce Harper coming up as the potential tying run with 2 outs in the bottom of the 11th. José Álvarez, a left-handed pitcher, on the mound. So Kapler actually went out to the mound and talked with Álvarez and the rest of the infield and Joey Bart, and came out after the game. They were talking about basically, do we want to pitch around Bryce Harper here? Maybe if we throw some teasers and fall behind 2-0, 2-1, then we put him on first base via an intentional walk. But Joey Bart was convicted in saying, let's just walk him. I don't want to mess around with this guy. Let's just put him on base. And so, look, I don't think that Gabe Kapler was just, no matter what Joey Bart said Kapler was going to do. Maybe Kapler was kind of leaning that way anyway. I don't know exactly what the thought process was, but Bart Kapler said he created conviction among the group that they should just walk him. And so they did. They put Bryce Harper on and brought up the winning run. And so for me, I don't like that move, even though it's such a worse hitter who was up next, because they had pinch run for Nick Castellanos with Roman Quinn, who's a far inferior hitter. Almost anyone is a far inferior hitter, but you're not doing that if it's Nick Castellanos on deck. But here's the thing. Harper was the tying run. So the worst case scenario is a home run, of course, and then the game is tied. But even then, you get Roman Quinn and you probably get him out, and then you move on to the next inning. So that's like the worst case scenario. And even for a player as good as Harper, a home run is never really a likely outcome. I don't know exactly what percentage of his plate appearances Harper has homered in, but it's less than 10%. I was actually just reading something completely unrelated in an article by Dan Szymborski at Fangraphs talking about Aaron Judge, and he mentioned Barry Bonds, and his home run rate was something like 8% of his plate appearances. And so Harper's going to be lower than that because Bonds was the best at hitting homers. And so I don't know, a 6% probability of a home run, and that's in general, not talking about a left-on-left matchup. And José Álvarez had gone like a full calendar year without giving up a home run. And so if Harper does anything other than hit a home run, you essentially inherit the same situation that you inherit by putting him on intentionally. So to me, there's a lot of downside to just giving him the base. And the only real downside of pitching to him is a home run. And that's not likely, even if it's way more likely with Harper than it would be with Roman Quinn. But the thing is with Quinn, and you've loaded the bases and it's 7-4, a walk becomes a huge play in that situation. And then Harper's forced to second base and he's the tying run. Now you've put him on second base. All that needed to happen was one walk. And so you put a lot of trust in José Álvarez, who had walked 2 in the outing. I actually don't know if that's counting the intentional walk, but Alvarez's command hasn't been the best lately. And so I just didn't agree. Made me very, very nervous. I would have preferred that they pitch to Harper, but look, they didn't hire me to be the manager. And so I kind of respect letting managers make these calls. It is not easy for them to have to make these calls, and it's a lot easier to do it from the comfort of your own home and watching on TV and the benefit of hindsight, of course. But in the moment, I didn't like it. It did work out. They struck out Roman Quinn. He chased a pitch that would have made it a full count. And so you're potentially, if he takes that pitch, you're one pitch away from that scenario I said where you've walked in a run, you've put the tying run on second base, and it would have been Rhys Hoskins up next with a chance. A double is going to win the game. A single is going to tie the game. So, man, I thought it was just kind of living dangerously, but it ended up working out. And there were other things in this game in terms of managerial decisions. Jacob Junis was pulled from this game after 4 1/3, in which he had allowed just 1 run, 3 hits, 2 walks. So I don't want to say he was absolutely cruising, but the Giants had a 3-1 lead, and it was the bottom of the 5th, and he allowed just kind of a seeing eye ground ball that was away from the defense to the 9th place hitter with Kyle Schwarber, a lefty, coming up. And instead of letting Junis continue to pitch, he had only thrown like 60-something pitches. They went to Harleen Garcia, who came in and got a couple of big outs and got through the inning. But that being said, you could definitely make a case that it was a quick trigger. I actually agree with that more. I think that you shouldn't treat Jacob Junis like he's an ace of a staff. Like, third time through the order, a couple of dangerous lefties in Schwarber and Harper looming there, and Schwarber directly coming up right then and there. I think it's perfectly defensible to take out a guy after 4 1/3 solid innings. The idea of like getting him through 5 to get the win, we have to get rid of that. The pitcher win, let's just get rid of it, in my opinion, because it's like, oh, let's make suboptimal decisions just so these guys can get their own personal win at the expense maybe of more likely getting a team win. That doesn't ever make any sense to me at all, and the Giants don't operate that way, nor should they. And then, of course, there was some pinch hitting decisions. The Giants, we'll talk about their lineup in just a minute. They threw out a somewhat ugly-looking lineup, but I'm going to explain why it wasn't as bad as some of the reaction I saw to it. And they had all these dangerous lefties on the bench, including Tommy La Stella, who pinch hit for Evan Longoria in a runners on first and second, 1-out situation down by just a run. It ended up working out, but we're going to talk about why that was a bit of a controversial decision and just the lineup in general. There was a lot of negative reaction to this lineup. We're going to talk about what it was and why the reaction was that way. And again, I'm going to do a little bit of defending, actually, the lineup that we saw. So all of that in just a second. But first, whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. If you're looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing, and maybe you don't want to spend hours in a store talking to somebody about this all afternoon and you'd rather do this from the convenience of your home, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. And to me, the convenience factor is just such a game changer. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Giants listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code LOCKEDON. That's code LOCKEDON, plus every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, as promised, we're going to continue to dig into some of the big moments in this game. I want to talk about the lineup specifically. I understand the reaction to the lineup. I'm not here saying everything is rosy when you look at this lineup, but there were reasons for it. They've got some guys on the injured list. They had an unfortunate situation. We'll break it all down in just a minute. We have an important favor to ask of you, though. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On podcasts. Go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to LockedOnPodcasts.com/survey. Thank you for your help. So yeah, I want to talk about the lineup that the Giants threw out there yesterday. They haven't faced a lot of lefties this season. I do think there's a significant number of people who don't really still understand that they're going to have a very different looking lineup when there's a lefty starter versus when there's a righty starter. And right now, this was the lineup that they threw out there against a lefty starter, and it had a lot to do with certain guys, Kapler wanting to give them rest, and it also had a lot to do with certain guys being underrated talents against left-handed pitching, and it also had a lot to do with some players who were absent. So the players who are absent, let's not forget Austin Slater. He's in there at the top of the lineup against a lefty when he's healthy, but he's on the injured list right now, although he is supposed to return soon when eligible this weekend in Miami. The other situation was that Darren Ruff lost his father yesterday or the night prior unexpectedly, and he leaves the team to go on the bereavement list. So our hearts go out to the Ruff family. It must be extremely difficult, and obviously the situation for the Giants is kind of secondary and how it affects their roster, but he's a big absence from the lineup while he's gone, and he's a big part of what they do against left-handed pitching. So Ruff will be gone for some period of time, and in his place, Elliot Ramos was actually called up prior to the game and flown in. He left for Philadelphia on Tuesday morning, arrived, it's 3 hours later in Philadelphia, and so he had to leave early to get there for the game, and he was in the game starting in the lineup. And so I actually thought it was kind of funny that there was this backlash about their starting lineup when they had Joey Bart and Elliot Ramos hitting side by side, which has that even happened ever? Because Ramos only has a few games, and I'm not sure Bart was always playing when Ramos was playing, but to have Ramos Bart side by side in the lineup is kind of significant, and some fans have been waiting a long time for that. Now, those players' prospect status has definitely, the shine has come off a little bit with what we've seen out of Joey Bart, which is just enormous offensive struggles, specifically with the strikeout. And then Elliot Ramos really struggling in AAA. But something randomly coming to my head is that Jacob Junis was struggling in AAA when they called him up to the majors, and he hasn't gone back down since, and he's been very effective. With this outing yesterday, his earned run average on the season is down to 2.68. Peripherals are higher than that, so they suggest that some regression is coming, and he's not going to, lead the team in ERA probably when all is said and done, but he's definitely done a fantastic job filling in for Tony DeSclafani. So the lineup was Estrada at the top. He had kind of gone dark. We hadn't seen Estrada in the lineup for a number of days. Suddenly, Donovan Walton was starting over Estrada at second base against right-handed pitching, and there were a lot of questions about that, and we addressed that yesterday. So if you want the whole third segment of yesterday's show, is addressing the Donovan Walton, Thairo Estrada situation. Part of it, the short, Spark Notes version is that even though Estrada has like reverse splits in his young major league career, platoon splits in small samples aren't really reliable. And I think that they probably assume that given enough of a sample, Estrada is actually going to be better against left-handed pitching. And so look no further than in yesterday's game against a lefty starter. They had him at the top of the lineup, obviously starting the game and also hitting first. And then after that, it went Wilmer Flores, and then Curt Casali was actually hitting third. And so, look, I understand the optics of Curt Casali being your number 3 hitter, but also there's a couple of things here. Number one, we have to look past the starting lineup as like the evaluation of what we're going to see in that game from this offensive unit. The way that the Giants use their bench is very different than how many teams use their bench. Many teams like only go to their bench if they have to, like the Phillies, they pinch ran for Nick Castellanos, and that's a common that's how they use their bench. And then it came back to bite them because Roman Quinn ended up being the final out of the game in a obviously huge situation. But for the Giants, with Casali hitting third as the DH, what I see is that he's going to be there when there's a lefty starter on the mound. And I pointed this out on Twitter. He's got a career, 112 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitching. These are career numbers. It's a significant sample. For Casali, he's got like a 340 on base percentage against left-handed pitching in his career, and the offense has been legit, not just for a catcher, but overall this season. I tend to buy more into the full career splits against lefties, and he's been good, and he ended up picking up a hit in 3 trips to the plate. He did kind of pop out in that first big situation in the first inning, but that's kind of besides the point. Any good hitters, like Nick Castellanos did something in a very similar spot later in the game, and he's the type of guy you would think that you would want hitting third. So they don't always come through in those situations, so you can't judge it based on one plate appearance. You just can't. And so anyway, 112 weighted runs created plus against lefties, 100 is average, so 12% above average. And the thing is, too, that you're going to pinch hit when a righty comes in. And the Phillies only have one lefty. Joe Girardi famously doesn't like to use pitchers 3 days in a row. And Brad Hand, their one lefty, had pitched 2 days in a row. So he wasn't going to pitch yesterday. So it was going to be all righty relievers. And so you've got this bench of Joc Pederson, Tommy La Stella, Brandon Crawford, and Mike Yastrzemski. And they used them. And so Joc Pederson ended up subbing into that DH spot in the middle of the lineup, and he came up numerous times in big situations and delivered and ended up hitting a haymaker 2-run homer in the top of the 11th inning with 2 outs that put the game away, essentially. And then Evan Longoria was hitting 4th in the starting lineup, and eventually they pinch hit with La Stella, who, by the way, drew a walk in that big situation and ended up contributing to a rally that gave the Giants a lead. Then Luis Gonzalez, we're going to talk about him a little bit later, ended up going 4 for 5 in this game. He was hitting 5th, Stuart Fairchild 6th, and then Ramos, Bart, and Donovan Walton. So look, it's not an ideal lineup, but part of it too was that they wanted, in an ideal world, to give some of these lefties a break, like Mike Yastrzemski and Brandon Crawford. They weren't able to give it to them because they needed to go to them, and then the game went long, so it didn't end up working out. But look, if you jump ahead 5-0 and your pitcher's cruising, you're not going to make those moves. You're just going to stick with that lineup. And so this is how they do it. And missing Slater and missing Ruff adds, Fairchild and probably Elliot Ramos as the guys in the lineup. And so if Slater and Ruff are in there, it's a completely different looking lineup. And also I want to make the point that Casali was the DH to start the game. And look, again, I get that it's Curt Casali, but also the numbers speak for themselves. 112 weighted runs created plus against lefties. And by the way, I wanted to point out the league average designated hitter this year has a 105 weighted runs created plus. So you're getting essentially perhaps better than average offense out of that spot in this game, even though it's Curt Casali hitting third. And then when you pinch hit with Joc Pederson, as soon as there's a righty in the game, you've got another guy who's well above that league average DH spot. So They ended up getting that spot in the lineup ended up with 3 hits in 6 plate appearances, including a huge home run by Joc Pederson. And so it ended up being a productive spot in the lineup, even though I think there was a lot of moaning and groaning, grumbling about the way that the lineup looked. And so that's really all I have to say about it. I think Longoria, by the way, he was pinch hit for with La Stella, and it turns out after the game, Kapler said that Longoria had shoulder soreness, which is an injury that kept him out for a while a little bit ago. And so he is not going to start today, they said, and that he could be available off the bench, and they hope to have him back for the series in Miami. So that's that about the lineup. Coming up next, I want to shift our attention to some of the big performers. I want to talk about some bullpen performances, Joc Pederson's home run, and then the home plate umpire, unfortunately insinuating himself in a major way into this game. But first, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs. Not much left there, and you can bet on who's going to be the finals MVP and so much more. Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today to learn more about the trends in action. You can also use your mobile device. The Giants, I'm just looking at the World Series odds right now. They've gone down. They were 14-1 at the beginning of May, and now they've gone down to 20-1. I think the pennant odds may be a little bit more attractive because, look, winning the World Series is always going to be long odds no matter who you pick. I wouldn't take these Dodgers bets at what are the Dodgers at? Not 3-1. That's the Yankees. 4-1 to win the World Series. Come on, that's just too high in my opinion. But they are a very good team. Giants at 11-1 to win the National League pennant. There are some good opportunities to check out at BetOnline. So check it out, and BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, as promised, we are going to take a look at some of the top performers. I just got to give a mention to Luis Gonzalez and some of these bullpen guys who came up big yesterday, and also the home plate umpire. Man, he really had a rough night. And look, it's a hard profession, and that's what I was just saying on Twitter earlier today, is that when any old fan at home can call a much better game than the actual umpire themselves, that's a problem. And that's the current state of the game right now as it pertains to the strike zone. So why don't we actually start there for just a second? This game, on Twitter, there's this umpire scorecards account that looks at changes in run expectancy based on the different calls that were made throughout the game. And the Phillies run expectancy was, the umpire added 2.7 runs to their run expectancy net in this game. And I mean, look no further than the Joey Bart plate appearance with the bases loaded. I think it was in the 10th inning, would have added on another run. And twice there was strike calls on balls and he would have walked, including the last one was on a full count. And so a ball scores a run. And so that's actually more than a run change in run expectancy, because not only do you automatically get a run, so it's at least a run, but then there's a chance for more runs when the inning continues, right? There's a probability of, with the bases are going to be loaded again, and so there's some probability that you're going to get even more than one. And so that alone right there was an enormous call, made 2 calls in that plate appearance. And what irritated me was that it wasn't consistent. And in the bottom of the 11th with Kyle Schwarber at the plate, there was a pitch in a better spot in that exact same area, but it was a little bit even closer to the edge. To me, it kind of grazed the edge of the zone, and it would have been strike 3. Instead, it was called a ball, and then Schwarber walked. And so that could have very easily ended up coming back to haunt the Giants in a major way. So the strike zone, I just continue to say, look, it's that simple. If I can be sitting at home and call a game much more accurately than the actual guy who's calling it, that's a problem. And that is currently what's going on. And so I could devote a whole show to how we need to fix this. It's going to happen. It's just irritating that it still hasn't happened all these years later, when we've kind of been trending towards having the capability to be able to call a much more accurate strike zone. So it really was not a good zone, and it was inconsistent, and it hurt the Giants disproportionately yesterday. And Bart, look, he needed that. He's scuffling so much. It should have been a walk that drives in a run. Instead, it's another strikeout. So that was unfortunate. But it just happens, and sometimes it's going to help you, and sometimes it's going to help the other team. I think the umpires are doing the best they can. They're wearing a mask. The pitches are nasty. They're not centered behind the plate. There's a catcher in front of them. There's a batter at the plate. And again, the pitches are much nastier than they look on TV. It's hard to get a good look. It's much easier for us at home watching on TV to get a good look. And so that's my point. So why do we put this job on them when it's not easy for them to do, and it is easy for the computer to do? So you at least need to be able to challenge a call. To me, a challenge would be quick, 10 seconds, show it on the video board, boom, call overturned, score a run, inning continues. So anyway, how about Luis Gonzalez really quick, and also these bullpen arms? Luis Gonzalez, just 4 for 5, has continued to be a real bright spot for the San Francisco Giants, and he's not going anywhere. I mean, with all the injuries that they've had, they are not close to getting healthy, and so Luis Gonzalez is here to stay for the foreseeable future. And all he's done is hit 347 with a 384 on base and 485 slugging. So look, the 402 batting average on balls in play is going to come down. And so I get a lot of questions like, can he keep it up? You say he won't, but can he? Well, you're not going to keep that up. So I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but I am saying you're not going to have a 402 average on balls in play. It's just going to come down. And so look, I mean, he has been a real bright spot. There's just no doubt about it. He does look like a major league player to me, and another just really good kind of diamond in the rough find along the lines of Yastrzemski and Wade and Donovan Solano and all these other guys who have just kind of come out of nowhere to establish themselves with the Giants. And that's part of why I say, like, you got to give a guy like Donovan Walton a little bit of, quote, runway, because it's not always easy to just hit right away. And I remind people that Mike Yastrzemski didn't hit right away. He struggled for his first month or two in the major leagues. And so there's a reason they target the guys that they target, and I think they have a pretty good track record of targeting good ones. They're not all going to work out, but it's easy to see why they like a lot of these guys, and Luis Gonzalez has just done a fantastic job. So I just want to keep giving him credit where credit is due, and also give credit to Jarlin Garcia. Like I said, he got out of a big situation and now has 17 straight scoreless innings to start the season, scoreless outings and innings. Has allowed some runs, but they were unearned. But he wasn't exactly sharp and got a big chase on what would have been ball 4, but great job by Jarlin Garcia. John Brebbia had a tough night. Jake McGee, though, was looking nasty. His first appearance since coming back off the injured list was touching 98 miles an hour. Tyler Rogers with 2 big innings. Dom Leone, Camilo Doval got a little bit unlucky with the ball hitting off the bag, and then José Álvarez closing it out. So clutch pitching and just grinding offense. They really should have had more runs, but it's encouraging that they're setting the table, and hopefully they can just start to cash in all of these guys who are on base, or at least at a higher rate than they have been. So the Giants are 27-21. They'll go for the sweep tonight, this afternoon, with Carlos Rodon on the mound against Aaron Nola. It's a really good pitching matchup. Nola is a righty, so expect the normal left-handed lineup with Yaz and La Stella and Crawford and all of those guys back in the lineup. So we will be back tomorrow breaking down what promises to be an entertaining game as the Giants go for the sweep. So thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast Locked On MLB on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider hitting that 5-star button. So easy and helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.